I can't really measure a billboard's return. I mean, I could give you a guesstimation, we could look at all that, but I can measure digital return, right? So I think that story is being told in a more dynamic way in more traditional organizations that, hey, it's not just an expense. We can better measure, track engagements, impressions, touches through a digital environment more so than you can the physical environment.
Welcome to the Lion's Den, hosted by Lance Bachman.
Everybody, welcome to the Lion's Den. I have Bernard Tynes from Penn Community Bank. He's in charge of all their marketing and analytics for Penn Community Bank, which is located here locally in Philadelphia area. I think you have about 8 branches now, if I'm correct.
24.
24. You're growing, Jesus Lord. So welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And I gotta say, damn, you're better looking in person than you. I do. Am I allowed to say that on camera? I don't know. Is that? Can I say that to you?
I'll take it. I mean,
Lance.
I appreciate it.
I saw you walk. I said, damn. I almost said the show's off today. The show's off.
Well, I appreciate that. Thanks for having me here, Lance. Certainly an honor to be here. You're like a living legend in our field. So appreciate the invitation.
Well, I'm glad you're on, and we're going to talk about a lot of different things on today's show about why data is so important.
Yep.
How your bank, and a lot of banks don't understand, they have to go from trying to get the grassroots on the streets to a digital game plan, which is a struggle when you're using grassroots people to run a digital product. Doesn't work. We know about that, how you had to make the transition. And then we'll just talk about some other things, diversity, inclusion, whatever you want to talk about. How's that sound?
Sounds good.
All right, so let's do this. Let's fire off and tell your story. Who you are, what you do. I know you have 3 beautiful children, so congrats. So fire away, my friend.
So Bernard Tynes, as you said, I am a lover of everything data, marketing, analytics, the whole gamut, if you will. Kind of fell into the industry, fell into banking, fell into marketing, finance. I was like a 6-year student in college. And my kids said, my parents said, listen, go find a part-time job as you finish your degree. Initially, I wanted to be an attorney. Then I wanted to be a psychologist. And that's at the point they said, go find a part-time job. Right. So I did that. I went to the local bank in Westchester, Pennsylvania. At that time, I was at Westchester University. Went there, became what I thought was just like a part-time, seasonal, summer teller type of guy, and really started to advance. I had the good fortune to have a lot of good mentors that gave me a tremendous amount of opportunity. And at that time, maybe 10 or so years ago, 10, 15 years ago, we were going through a merger and acquisition streak at the bank. So that local bank was buying up local banks. So I got appointed to the merger and acquisition team. That allowed me to really understand the inner working of banks across the region, really, as we would go in and acquire them, develop them. I found my sweet spot in marketing, kind of shifted my educational journey to accommodate that. Went to a larger regional bank, did marketing and strategy there. Went to a bigger bank, did more marketing and some retail stuff over there. Then a buddy of mine said, hey, there's a bank out in Bucks County. Want you to come there, help me build out something great. Went with him, and kind of the rest is history. So I've been at Penn Community Bank now for 5 years. Under the leadership of our great CEO, and I'm really building out a brand story.
And what people don't realize, 5 years in the banking business is like 30 years back in the day, because bankers change jobs like people change underwear. And we know it's this craziest thing. Like people were like, man, Lance, you got turnover, Facebook has turnover, Google has turnover. I was like, not compared to bankers.
Right. Absolutely.
So let's talk about, how did you fall in love with marketing though? And why is data so important? Like marketing, people think it's sexy, they think it's fun. It's actually quite opposite. It's the grind.
Absolutely.
Can you talk about that part?
Yeah, it's kind of like the bridging of art and science to me, right? So when you look at marketing, you say there's a whole lot of like the sexiness as you've described it, right? It's kind of fun, it's kind of powerful, but then there's a science to it. And I joke with my team. I have a great team at the bank all the time about there's a lot of operations, there's a lot of tactical maneuvering behind marketing. And then I lean into my psychology experience, because I do have a degree in psychology too, and it kind of blends it all together, because at the end of the day, we're trying to reach human beings. Whether you're B2B, B2C, we're trying to talk to Lance, the human being. And so if you can take data, marketing, psychology, meld it all together, you have a great story.
If you like this content and you're trying to grow your business, Follow me at Lance Bachman and Lance Bachman Digital on Facebook. LFG, time to grow. And you know, at Penn Community Bank, when we don't realize this, banks look for businesses also because that's where they can leverage money, their deposits. So most people don't understand that. Like,
Absolutely.
You know, I always say this to people, like talking to banks or a banker, I'm not asking you for approval. I'm deciding who I'm doing business with.
Absolutely.
And most business owners, especially small, don't understand that until they realize the bank actually needs you because that's how they lend money out on the street based on their deposits. So let's talk about that. Because you said something that I don't think most people understand is you're trying to communicate. And you really, Penn Community is trying to tell their story right now more than ever.
Absolutely.
And you have two different audiences, right? You have the local community bank where you want people to come in and open up checking accounts. I'm assuming that's still a priority.
Absolutely.
Right? That's most local banks. Then also you're trying to get the business deposits, right? They're probably your number one and two priorities.
We have a sustained focus on the business segment at Penn Community Bank. One, because as you said, you know, there's some profitability there, but also it really infuses the local economy. What is a local economy, a local community without a business? We saw that through the pandemic. As businesses shut down, people lost jobs, the economy failed. So absolutely, Lance, that's one of our main focuses.
So when you're going in your old marketing before the pandemic, I'm assuming you guys are doing a lot of grassroots, state fairs, local football games, whatever it may be to get, and then all of a sudden it's all shut down. And it looks like we're going back that way.
Yeah.
I mean, it looks like we're heading that way. That's whether you want to or not. That's I don't know who's going to comply, but we'll find out when it happens. But, you know, what made you say we got to pivot? Was it a fight with your bank? Was it like all hands on deck? Or walk me through that. I know your bank before was doing a lot of outreach to the community personally.
Yeah. So we definitely have a major traditional marketing focus, right? Whether that's traditional media, to your point, feet on the street. We are a relationship-based bank. So we want people out on the street at the community fairs doing all those great things. But to your point, then comes pandemic, shuts down the world. And we really had, and we used the word quite a bit over at the bank, we had to pivot. And we had to pivot quickly. So a digital strategy has always been a part of my marketing plan. But it was always a long burn, right? Like, we're going to do this in phases. We're going to take our time to get there. We're going to, there's no rush to get there. But when you cannot physically reach your network, you have to quickly pivot and really optimize and maximize the digital channels. And that's what we had to do. I'm grateful that I have a forward-looking leadership team at the bank, and they understood just that. So we had to change our strategy. Even sales tools. People can't go knock on doors, right?
No.
I had to give our salespeople digital business cards, so to speak, right? And drive that. And I think the result of accelerating that part of our strategy has really yielded great results and a true buy-in to the power of digital.
I mean, as any digital guy, did at least your digital budget increase?
It did. So it's funny. One of the only line items that increased in my budget. Absolutely.
Thank God.
Because
we deal with banks all the time. We're like, we don't know. I'm like, gee, how does 70%? And I'm going to guess it used to be probably 70 to 80% traditional.
Absolutely.
20% digital, right?
Absolutely. Yep.
Think about that, right?
Yep.
And it took a pandemic to make people say, whoa.
Yeah.
And now what's it, probably 50-50, 60-40?
About 50-50 right now. We'll get to 60-40 soon. And it's funny, I
like that comment. We'll get to 60-40 soon.
If we had any CFO here at the table right now, I can't really measure a billboard's return. I mean, I could give you a guesstimation, we could look at all that. But I can measure digital return, right? So I think that story is being told in a more dynamic way in more traditional organizations that, hey, it's not just an expense. We can better measure, track engagements, impressions, touches through a digital environment more so than you can the physical environment.
You're big into the community, right? Not to switch gears, because you were talking about digital marketing, but I think a lot of things go hand in hand, right? You're on the board for United Way.
Yep.
You're 40-40. You just won 40-40 about 2 years ago, if I remember correctly, for African Americans, which I don't know why they separated, because I think you should win for the whole entire 40-40. But that's
I won the whole entire one and for African Americans, actually.
Yeah.
So, yep.
Good. So, And you also were named one of Philadelphia's, I think, the most influential banker in Philadelphia.
One of the top 10. Yep.
And, that's a lot of accolades for someone so young,
Yep.
right? Talk about why the community is so important. Because you were involved in the community before Penn Bank, and you're going to be afterwards, I'm assuming. I'm not saying that you're leaving, but, if you did. Why is the community so important to you?
I mean, it's critical, right? And I've worked for organizations that have been huge, and I've consciously came back to work for an organization that's smaller and community first focused. And I'll say it's so big, and I think there's a whole case study out there right now. Look at the pandemic, right? Look at the impact that it had on our nation, on the world, on our communities. It really was a resurgence, almost a revival, if you will, of this idea of community, right? People, my neighbor who is elderly, they needed me to shovel their walkway. I would not have had time to do it before the pandemic, when it was snowing. I would not have thought about doing it, but I took my son over there. We shoveled them out every time it snowed, 1, to help them, 2, to teach my son a lesson about community. That would have never happened outside of the pandemic because I would have been racing out of my driveway trying to get to work or to get to a business appointment. Same thing. People needed family and friends to help, homeschool their kids and things of that nature. I think the pandemic did a great job of bringing us back to what's important. And community, whether that's your work community, whether it's your family, your faith-based community, whatever that community is, it's critical, it's important, and I think we're all better people when we don't lose sight of it.
I can agree with you on that. So let's talk about this, something near and dear to you. I know you're big into inclusion and diversity, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's a subject people shouldn't be afraid to talk about. I think, not be very frank with you, I think some people use it as a weapon, right?
Yeah.
And I think if you're just having an honest conversation, most likely it's going to probably be a good conversation.
Yeah.
Can you talk to me about why inclusion is so important to you in diversity?
Right now, and I think we can all agree, the world has convened a conversation, right? The events of the last 18 months, at this point almost 2 years, starting with George Floyd and other events, there's a conversation going on. We don't always agree about what's happening in that conversation, and we don't have to.
No doubt.
But we're brazen and we're bold enough to have the conversation. And in my opinion, the best things come out of a good conversation. And in order for us to evolve, to grow, to be better Americans, better people, better whatever, we have to be okay engaging in a conversation. And I say it all the time. Doesn't mean the conversation is fun, comfortable. It's typically not. And the best conversations typically are not. And I just feel like it's important for my generation and for people in the business arena to be proponents, not necessarily to solve the issue, but to open up and have a conversation. And I think that's really the essence of diversity, equity, and inclusion, bringing people to the table, giving them a seat, giving their voices an opportunity to be heard, and having that conversation.
How do you carry the weight of being Philadelphia's one of their biggest influencers out there? Because you are. I mean, people know who you are. I mean, listen, you're a character, right? I mean, people can see you a mile away. You walk through a room, eyes are on you. Do you own it? Do you not like it?
It's humbling, right? So I don't ever want to represent, too much to any one person, right? So it's a humbling experience. I take it with a lot of responsibility, so it's a blessing, right? I want to be someone my family can be proud of, right? And at the end of the day, if I go home and my kids kiss me and my daughter runs up and hugs me and yells "Daddy" and my wife is happy, I'm a happy man.
Now, when you go and tell people that you are in charge of the Salesforce implementation, and most people don't understand what that means because there is nothing out of the box. I love to hear that garbage, right?
Yeah.
Like Salesforce, I'm sure they told you, right, oh, we can handle all your needs. It's out of the box, right?
Yeah.
Out of the box, right?
Not so much.
I think only name, phone number, email address, and a few other things might be out of the box, right? I mean, I'm being sarcastic, but I mean, it's not a jab at Salesforce. It's a jab at every product out there, out of the box. No one would ever think, looking at you, they would think you're a salesperson, right?
Right.
But for you to be implementing Salesforce, some would say it's kind of a geeky, nerdy job.
Yeah.
People say it about me when they know I'm a digital marketer, right? Well, it's kind of nerdy. You don't look like one.
Right.
What would you say to that? Because you got to geek out at times to be implementing Salesforce. No sense to use the word geek, but you know what I'm saying. Like.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of the evolution of our industry, right? Our industry has gone through so many evolutions, right? There was a time it was all about traditional marketing and advertising. People were smoking cigars, kicking back at, coming up with advertising campaigns. There were times it was all about production, and if we can just produce enough stuff, people will buy it. There was a time it was like fully like sales. Then you evolve to the point that it's more a holistic story, right? And I think that's still where we are. We have to meet the whole person. And now it's a data-driven story, right? In order for me to be successful in the marketing space, you have to have a desire for data. I tell my team all the time, and I joke, but it's true. They're smarter than me, right? And I want them to be. They're smart marketers, right? And that's the difference. I tell the team, I want us to be viewed as smart marketers. Right? Okay. And the only way to be a smart marketer is with data. And think about a bank. The bank, next to your doctor, we have the most data on you. The doctor and maybe the government, right? Yeah. Outside of those two, we're the industry, we're the sector that knows the most about Lance, right? But the difference is we don't do anything with the data.
The majority of people don't.
No one does.
It blows my mind away how people just don't use the data to their advantage.
Absolutely.
I mean, it could cut your advertising spend, probably down to 10% a month you'd have to spend if you just actually use the data. Maybe 30%. Maybe I'm exaggerating a little bit, but
right.
We'll walk into banks, as you know,
yep.
And we'll be like, "Are you using your emails, phone numbers, and address?" No, not on social media at all. No.
Yep.
But you want to attract more customers.
Right.
Yeah, I'm going to send Susie down to the local fair.
Right.
What?
Yeah.
I mean, so it's like amazing to me.
Yeah.
So let's talk about this. You deal with a lot of small SMBs over at Penn Community Bank. Mm-hmm. We know that. Mm-hmm. What advice would you give? Actually, let's talk about this first. What's the biggest mistake you think small businesses make and medium-sized businesses when it comes to advertising? Digital marketing, what would you say?
I think it's the investment in the digital space, right? I mean, I talk to people all the time, and they're like, "Oh, you're a marketer, right?" I'm like, "Yeah. We're starting a new business. Great, good for you. We're gonna put we're gonna post on Facebook. We started a Facebook account. We're gonna post there on our organic page." Okay. That's fantastic, but I think there's a misconception that if I post on an organic page, I'm doing digital marketing. There's a huge disconnect there.
Yes.
And I think people have to come to terms with we have to invest in that space. It's not happenstance. You're not going to post something organically and it's going to go viral. That's not the strategy. And I think the more we normalize that, it would help that small business customer.
I actually had to say this to someone. I say it to everyone, but I had it pound in their head. I said, "My man, Facebook and Google are free, but the eyeballs to your content is not."
Right.
They made that clear.
Right.
And they look at you like this.
Right.
Like
Yep.
someone to walk into your store is free.
Right.
But they can't walk out with your product for free.
Right.
Eyeballs cost money to your content.
Absolutely.
You just want the right eyeballs.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, and I think the more people recognize that, understand that at the small business scale, it would save a lot of grief probably for you, I'm sure.
Without a doubt. Give me some of the, if you're a small business, a medium-sized business, where would you tell them to start? Hey, listen, you're a banker, you know it well, you understand the businesses, all these businesses well. What would you tell them to start? If someone said, "Hey, Bernard, where do I even start?"
Yeah, I'd say, and it kind of is adjacent to our last conversation. Take time. You get a business plan. You come into the bank. You might open an account, get a loan, but also have a marketing plan. Develop what that looks like. And hey, I love digital marketing, but I'm also a fan of traditional marketing. I think they can live together, right? Mm-hmm. And so what does that look like, beyond, as you say, beyond sending Susie to the fair, right, to hand out, pamphlets, what does the rest of that plan look like? Take time, develop it, and realize you are going to have to apply dollars, to get those eyeballs on your content in a sustained way, right? It's not like, "Oh, we'll do it for the month of July," right? You have to do it in a sustained methodology in order to yield the benefit.
Let's talk about that. You've been running Penn Community Marketing now for about 3 years now, I think.
About
correct?
2 years, yep.
2, right? Do you tell them this doesn't happen overnight? Because everybody wants instant gratification. Everybody wants instant results. do you talk to me about that conversation? Because you got to manage their expectations up top.
Right, absolutely, yeah. And the good thing is our president is a past marketer, right? So she understands kind of the strategy behind it, but it's also delivering that message to several other internal stakeholders, right? It's an evolution, right? It's an evolutionary process that we have to go through. Brand, right? Brand does not happen overnight. Brand can take 5, 10, 15 years to develop and to cement into a geography. And so really managing to expectation, I think, is absolutely critical. And it's something, to your point, I kind of fight every day.
I'm sure you do.
Every day. And everyone's a marketer, Lance. Everyone is a marketer, which
I say this all the time.
Doesn't help.
Your nephew, your nieces, I'm like, they're like, what made? I'm like, he's been doing it for 4 years. I've been doing this for 27 years.
Yeah,
27. This is my life.
Yeah.
This is my look around you. This is my life. Like this is all I do. I don't go and play Yahtzee with my uncle and say, let me be your digital marketer. Like I don't. Like Uno, let me be your digital marketer. No, like this is what I do. On the final roar, and I want to ask you something different, because I believe that everyone should have a voice and be able to look up to someone, right? Yep. Especially because I deal a lot with troubled youth, and I deal with a lot of all different types of people, right?
Yep.
As an African American male, you're successful. On the final roar, what would you like to say to a kid out there that might be part of one of these programs, white or black, that's having a rough life? But I'm going to say, use the word black if you don't mind.
Sure.
Little African-American 10, 13, 14, 15-year-old kid saying, I'm struggling. He's watching this, or his mom and dad's watching this. He wants to show it. Yep. What advice would you give to that child about going through what you had to go through being an African-American male to get to where you are?
Yeah, great question, Lance.
I hope you don't mind me asking. I know it's not one of the questions we sent over to you, but you know what? I was thinking about it, and I think, why not just ask something for real?
Yeah, I would say... and I'll take a lesson that I learned from my son this week. And I would summarize it by saying, face your fears head on. So we put my son in tackle football for the first time, right? He loves soccer, right? So he's a big soccer player. He said he wanted to do tackle football. I wanted him to do it. My wife did not. We figured out where he's going to do it. So we're at the field. He hasn't seen people in 18 months because of the pandemic. We pulled him in, homeschooled him. He's going back to school, thank goodness. But
you think he is?
Yeah. So yeah, I think he is. I hope he is. So he's kind of like not used to people, right? And he's never played tackle football. And some of these kids in this league have played since they were like toddlers. He's 8, and he's not familiar with the drills. He's not familiar with really anything. And let me tell you, and I don't like to admit it, my son sucked the first couple of days. The first couple of days of practice, he was horrible. And I felt bad for him. And he said to me, Dad, I'm going back, and I'm going to face my fears. There's a lot of people there. They're much better than me, but I can do this. I can do this. And I think, I pull out of that story, this kind of message, right? If we face our fears, people are going to be better than you. People are going to have opportunity and advantages that you may never have had, but you still have to go back to the field every night, 6 o'clock, face your fears, practice, and guess what? 3 days, he's getting better. And you're not going to get it. You're not going to be a pro athlete overnight, right? But day by day, practice by practice, you'll get better. And I think that's a lesson that we can all take with us to face our fear, especially in a time where things are so scary, right, for us all.
Absolutely. Bernard, thank you for being on the show. I appreciate it. How can people get in touch with you? They just want to talk about marketing or kick it with you?
Yeah, LinkedIn, Bernard Tynes. Hit me up on LinkedIn. Shoot me an email. Happy to chat.
Bernard, thank you so much for being on the show. I appreciate it. The Lions Den keeps growing to the great guests like you.
Thanks, Lance. Thanks for having me.